Jeez, the abuse. I'm gonna have to take this up in group next week.
Are we live now?
We are, yes.
Greetings,
Not this
everyone. We call the meeting to order, the Sustainability Committee meeting of August 28th. And the first order of business is welcome and introductions. We do have, hi, Dan. We have a couple of guests, so I thought it would be appropriate to go around and at least give your names so that we can be more on a personal level. I'm Rick Meinking, and welcome to the Sustainability Committee meeting.
Anson Voter, I'm a committee member.
David Kirstein, committee member.
Jamie Fitch, Sustainability Manager.
Emerson Goodrich, Sustainability Fellow.
Patrice Cassenholz, auxiliary sustainability.
You're on the Sustainability
Yeah.
Committee.
Yeah, but I'm like.
Well, we all have the same credentials.
Dan Bacon, M&R Holdings, work on the Down project.
Abby Tickle, Member Holdings and Not Project as well. Autumn Spirit, playing Dark Kitchen.
Well, welcome, everyone.
And April, do you want to just say?
I don't, April Scyther, Town Council. Hi, guys. Nice to see you.
Thank you for. All right, the first order of business is to vote on the minutes from our 7/24/24 meeting. Jamie had included that in our packet. Entertain a motion to enter those into the record.
I so move.
And we have a second. Any discussion? Any corrections necessary? I didn't see any inaccuracies.
Jamie's.
Sure, I'm not, but thank you.
All right, let's see, we've got everybody here, so by raise a hand, all in favor? Looks unanimous. As typical, we take a look at the agenda and offer an opportunity for any committee member to bring forth an agenda item which they feel want to have us address. And at this time, are there any changes to the agenda?
Rick, do you want to move new business first?
We could, since we have guests. I think that's a good idea. Any objections from the committee to move new business first? Seeing none, we shall do that. And then finally, we have nobody in the audience, but we do have public here, and we will open it up for public comment. Anybody wishing? Very well, then we'll close public comment and enter into new business. And this relates to the EV charging ordinance. And Jamie had provided information, but do you want to give us a background, Jamie?
Sure. So we received the memo from Dan about kind of giving some feedback on the EV charging ordinance and suggesting some modifications. That memo is in the agenda packet as well as the current EV charging language. And Dan, I understand do you have a presentation, or do you want to kind of do an introduction for
Provide
us?
an overview.
Sure.
If that's however you guys want.
Yeah, I'm all right. If Rick is.
Yeah, that's fine. Do you want to give us your assessment of it?
Sure, that'd be great. And thank you. Again, I'm Dan Bacon. Abby and I work together. Abby actually is in charge of our general assets, particularly our multifamily assets at the Down. So she is in the weeds around overall apartment and condominium management, and also as it relates to the EV chargers and use and kind of management side of things. Let me start by saying I'm an EV driver. I've been one for 7 years. I actually hold a position. The reason the town has EV vehicles, through code enforcement, I started that process. So we're not by any means anti-EV. I know a fair amount about kind of the mechanics of driving an electric vehicle and all that kind of thing. Also at the Downs, I think we have about 12 EV chargers already in place, all pre-ordinance. So we've been at it for a while around putting them in as we've done the project in proportion to what we perceive as kind of demand. But so far in reality, we have maybe 5 or so residents that drive EVs out of 1,000 residents. So we've been working obviously, we've been installing EVs from the get-go. More on our own prerogative and also working with the planning board. But over the past year, obviously, the ordinance has been in place. We've been really kind of in the weeds on the mechanics of like, how does it actually work? How do we execute on this? And some of the headwinds, I would say, they're kind of macro to micro, that I think is important for the sustainability to kind of understand. One is around just the overall grid. We have a large enough project that we actually have to work with CMP on our overall loads and our overall load projections for the project. And we've designed the project to kind of fit within the grid as far as we understand it, in its capacity to serve the project and other projects in town. With the EV ready in particular kind of requirements, I think we're gonna kind of blow that out of the water, in terms of staying within what the grid's capacity is, and that has it's a bigger impact than we as a project can kind of do. That's a CMP, a PUC, if the town wants to take on multi-million-dollar worth of grid updates. I mean, that can also be a town initiative, but it's not something the project can really handle. And in part, that's based on working with CMP, for example, our condominium projects with the new ordinance, and we're moving forward and we're complying with it. But we're doubling the load projection for that one project, and that's 96 unit projects, and just with the EV requirements, it doubles it. So if you do that across the project, there's no way that we can stay within kind of the grid's capacity. So that's a headwind that we can't tackle on our own, and also we think sort of disproportionate to the use of EVs and the short-term projection. I guess the other piece that's worth noting is sort of the ready requirements, where you need to actually transformer in place for the future. That's a significant cost that's quite speculative. So we're putting in the necessarily transformers not only for the chargers we install, but I think, as you guys know, the ordinance, you also have to be ready. And our interpretation of that means you need the electrical capacity to be ready. That's a really big investment to put in an extra transformer. It could be on a site. It could be multiple transformers, depending on the size, the number of parking spaces, etc. It's a huge cost, and also it relates to the kind of the load projection. So that's something that we're wanting to see revised, because it's a huge sort of financial burden, and also ties into the load projections. I think the third kind of biggest one we want to cover is the level 3s. So level 3 is required for larger commercial, particularly retail. And we've done a lot of research on it, and it's a huge cost for, say, a grocery store or a retailer who is not in the business of providing fuel to vehicles. It'd be one thing if there was enough users to say, yeah, okay, we'll put that in and we can offset it with revenue, but we're not seeing in the short term, at least with our experience, there's a revenue source that would come close to kind of paying for that. So that's a $60,000 to $100,000 cost based on our analysis per charger, which you have to do 3 or 4, you do the math. For businesses that don't know anything about electric vehicles, or that's not their business model. Grocery stores' business model is to sell groceries, not to figure out how to generate revenue off of a charging unit. What we've seen kind of, and I driving the EV, see at grocery stores is Tesla comes along and does a lease, and they put it in a charging bank at a grocery store. The grocery store didn't fund the charging bank, or ChargePoint might do something like that, where they are the funder, but that's a different transaction than a retailer kind of coming in, figuring out how to do a level 3. So we wanted to talk about that as well, and to see, we prefer level 2, if a retailer needs to put in a charger, then it should be a level 2, or maybe they shouldn't be responsible for charging at all. Really, because that's more of a consumer's choice, you know, where you go find charging, you go to a charging bank, or you go somewhere that you can charge, you charge at home, it's not really, so yeah. Retailer's obligation to provide charging from our perspective. So those are kind of our things that we see as headwinds in actually working with the ordinance. And we offered some ideas, because we want to come in with solutions, not just problems. We have an opportunity with a project that we're doing, and there's other projects in town that are adjacent to each other, where we see like shared charging being a great opportunity, rather than every site having to do their own charging.
An example of like what sorts of entities you're talking about?
I'm talking about if you have 2 apartment sites next to each other, okay, across the street from each other, instead of being duplicative, I guess, in terms of infrastructure, everybody have to have extra chargers, have chargers, transformers on both sites. Do you cluster and do a charging area on one, and both sites can use it. Focusing our investment, focusing our loads to one location, because we have a very walkable project where you can walk across the street and park your car and charge, versus having it in the parking lot that you might be residing in. Same thing for mixed use, you know, there could be a retailer next to a housing complex, and they would have different demand times. If the retailer is really responsible for some ability to charge, then they could park next door at the apartment site, charge during the day when residents might be at work, and then it's freed up for residents charging in the evening. We're looking at shared parking anyway, overall with the project, to reduce the need for parking in impervious areas, things like that. So it's a natural thing. And then one of the other recommendations was under the ready is to not actually have it be ready from a transformer standpoint. Because that's a very big speculative cost that you don't know whether there'll be demand for it, or there's other technologies that could happen in the future that change the approach to charging apps. You know, it's a very early industry and technology to make long-term investments with a lot of confidence. I don't know what else I'm listening, but those are just some of the key points we raised here as potential work.
For some of the apartments, are they apartments or condos, or both? Do
We're
they,
doing both in the project.
do some already have if you have a Tesla, do you have a dedicated spot? Do they already have their own? Not
So-
shared one,
The
or?
projects we've built already, pre-ordinance, where we put in chargers, they're not dedicated to a particular customer, but they're already available.
Okay.
And we have a key or a mechanism for
We have a key that if the
a
driver-
renter to use it. If you're within, you know, the rental system, if you will. The condominiums have a charger, but there's no one that drives an electric vehicle, so it's not really being used.
Can people from outside come in and use it? They can't, because they.
Not in the
It's not
current
in
setup the way it is, with something that
Right.
we're proposing in a public area. would be able to-
So in your multifamily, you have open space parking, nobody's assigned a parking spot.
People are assigned parking spaces, but there's excess parking spaces that aren't assigned, and in the unassigned area, there is chargers. The condominium association controls kind of their parking, because it's condominium, it's privately.
I can imagine that most condo owners probably want assigned parking.
They do, and they
Okay,
also
they
don't
would
want
determine-
somebody from another part of town charging there, because
Yeah, sure.
their budget.
Yeah.
Under the shared scenario, we would manage it differently, like in the proposed condition, we would manage it differently, where there can be. There's, I think there's a number of ways, you could open up during the day, you know, for retail customer. But then in the evening, it's not public because it's reserved for the renters or the residents, so we can figure out the kind of.
So that renter would have to then get up and move his car in the morning if he's not going to work that day, has a day off or something. We'll have to get up and move his car so that it's back open for that business.
Or it's open or isn't. I mean, if you're coming to go shopping, you know, you may or may not be able to charge. That's sort of a common situation now. Charging at home is sort of a certain thing that you can do.
Homeowners, yeah, the
Yeah.
studies have shown that most of the
Yeah.
charging is done at night.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
And that's
you
what
go
I,
to a Tesla bank if you have a Tesla, or I guess there's other cars. You can charge Teslas now, but that's how you get a quick charge, obviously, is you go to one of those and you kind of pay for that.
sure,
service.
it's like going to the gas station,
Exactly.
filling up your tank.
Yeah. And the ones that are under construction now, we're complying with the ordinance, those have dedicated. spaces.
Are they indoors or outdoors?
They're outside.
I'm gonna open it up for comments from committee members. Anybody wishing, I'll start off if this ordinance went through a long and rigorous vetting process. And I think you'll remember, Dan, we actually engaged with developers and asked for feedback when we developed this ordinance. And you participated in that. And it was a long process within the town council in that there were multiple back and forth and opportunities for public comment at that time. And when it goes to the planning board, it was also given an opportunity for public comment. And then, of course, the final town council. So there were numerous opportunities to weigh in on this ordinance, and I'm just curious as to why we didn't hear about the low grid constraints of whatever you're saying now. I know there's a lot of things that have happened in the Downs that, you know, it's a moving puzzle. The Innovation District, for example, there were lots of sites and then a particular business came in and bought almost a half of that and put in one building, a large one, very large. So there's a continuous, you know, modification of what the Downs is going to be. Can I ask, at what percentage are you at in development of the Downs and the residential districts, not excluding the downtown district?
We're close to around 40% probably developed.
Go, okay, total?
Yeah.
What's the breakout between the residential and the innovation?
Oh, I thought you meant residential only.
No, and now innovation. Okay, so you're 40% built out in the residential?
40% built from total number of residential units.
Okay,
I think we're probably closer to 50% overall developed from a developed, undeveloped standpoint.
And innovation's probably what, like 80%?
Innovation itself,
Innovation itself.
yeah, the innovation district.
80% of the developable lots are built on, maybe 70%, because the IDEX did
Yeah,
a large lot,
yeah.
and they only built on quote unquote half of it, so.
yeah, and there's an
Yeah.
expansion that could go there that they had
Yeah, sure.
brought forward. Yeah,
So for a little more perspective, if you move on to single family, you don't have an issue with that. It's really just the multifamily and the level 3 for the larger retail that is the
Yeah.
issue.
and you do know we have a lieu fee,
We do,
Yeah.
15,000 for a level 3 if you choose not to put it in.
Yeah.
So that's
I
just
mean, we
significant.
pay a lot of piece, so we wanna install EV chargers, so this is more about the number of chargers and the level of chargers, not, we wanna invest in EVs in proportion and also being prepared for the future.
Mhm.
I wonder if they.
We don't wanna just say, oh, no, we're not doing EVs, we're gonna write a check. We'd like the ordinance adjusted to be tied to the levers we can pull in this project, the opportunities of this project, and also be kind of right size, frankly, from.
Well, isn't that up to the developer? And it kind of, this gives the flexibility that will allow the developer to do that. In some cases, you don't want to have level threes in this location, but because you are good stewards of Scarborough, you're choosing to put them there, and so you're gonna make that investment there. But we wouldn't require anything better or bigger than what you paid in a lieu fee in a site that you chose not to do. So it was designed to build in flexibility for developers. Go ahead, Dan.
I'm actually open to talking about some adjustments, because I recognize that when we did it ahead of time, it was all very speculative, and like, honestly, I hadn't thought about the costs of the transformers at those sites. I was thinking about the cost of the actual chargers at those sites and that sort of be ready, like, hold off on the final payment until we get to that point. What I am concerned about, though, if we back the ordinance out, is how hard, easy, or like, what is the process of going in and adding an additional transformer to a facility 10 years down the road? That's the part we're trying to avoid, these things that would be difficult or impossible in the future. And we're now driving 2 EVs and have a longer range EV, so I'm newly experiencing the charging infrastructure out of the world. I never did before. I had a short range EV, I charged at home, I drove it around, I charged at home. It was never an issue. Now that I am driving EVs out in the world, I am more and more concerned about the number of level 3 chargers that are available. So I have on a number of occasions gone through situations where level 3s were full. So I'm more concerned about backing off of level 3 chargers at large retail places. That's where I'm planning to find them.
And that's the only place in our ordinance
Right,
where it's
right.
required.
5 on that, like, as I'm reading through that, 5 felt like overkill. And so maybe there's numbers adjustments that we need to be made there.
Well, it's 50% of the number
Right,
for level 2 and then 50% for level
Right,
3,
right.
so it backs out a little bit.
right, but remember, I was concerned about the numbers at retails ahead of time, like that might be high. That we might be in an overkill situation for retail. For places where people sleep, like other states are moving faster than us. We are still behind in the state of Maine. But if that starts to catch up, I think we're not that far off in terms of the ordinance that we wrote. So back up to my question, what does it take to transform and put in an existing site?
So there's a couple things, like one solution we have there is we don't put the transformer in, but there's the physical space for a transformer.
Okay,
Because you put in the transformer, we have conduit from the street to the transformer pad. Design the space to have 2 transformers, but we only put the one in that's serving the chargers that in.
they're actually there.
When there's demand, there's space and we know where that second transformer would go. To put in $30,000 transformer without.
Right.
These
That I'm
are
very
significant
interested in. That
things.
I
These aren't, they
feel like
sound
I'm-
like small money, they're not.
So if we were to maybe redefine a little bit on what our EV capable and EV ready definitions are, that might eliminate that obstacle that you're speaking about.
Yes. Now, do you?
But it wouldn't necessarily take away from the fact that the ordinance requires X number of spaces
Right,
and charger, based on spaces, chargers, to be available, who knows, down the road. We
So,
can't tell.
right, right. So in terms of the transformer thing, would be enough to do a there are several different meetings. Would it be enough to do a redefine that says that ready doesn't include having a transformer or anything like that?
That's what we were suggesting.
Okay, yeah. Um,
Kind of speak to the level 3.
well, just, I have a question.
Well, that's what I
Is it
was referring
possible
to, just the
to-
level 3s, the transformers.
Yeah, I'm aware that most of the level 3s that are going in are going in. Like it's a different entity paying for and installing them. And so is it too much to ask those entities as part of their construction planning to work with and negotiate with EVgo and or Tesla to ensure that level 3s are there?
That's our challenge. I mean, that's the model generally is you see chargers at a grocery store, for example.
Yeah.
Grocery store is not
Yes, I understand.
installing them for $500,000. Tesla is, ChargePoint is.
Right.
And they're leasing that land, or it's a no cost lease, but it's an amenity, right?
Right,
The ordinance doesn't say that. The ordinance says figure it out.
right. And the way to figure it out is to negotiate with one of these companies to ensure that they're there.
Most of those
Those
companies,
things aren't necessarily gonna happen concurrently with site plan approval, or a grocery store can't move forward unless Tesla decides, yeah, we wanna go there.
I get that, because it's like saying, okay, your grocery store, but to open, you have to have a gas station to figure that out. It's not part of your model, so I get your.
It's a business,
Yeah, it's-
like a grocery store knows how,
I'm wondering if there's some way, and you're out there negotiating things, I'm wondering if there's some way to use our fee in lieu better for level 3s. So that the town is actively, we just had Tesla's opening up a charging station at the Fairfield Inn, so they went through a site plan
Mhm,
process
mhm.
and they leased the land and they are installing it, and that's what I'm used to seeing happen from those sorts. They go in, they're like, oh, it's a good spot, I'm gonna put them there. I wonder if there is a way to really work out our fees so that that's what they're using. I'm just trying to figure that out. It's early. How we could use that to encourage and incentivize charging stations in key locations where they're really appropriate. And
Yeah.
the town has sort of this investment fund or seed money, if you will, to go have conversations, more in economic development conversation. I'm just trying to think a little bit differently. Because it is hard to tell. I get that, like, we do food, we do this, we don't do that. If you don't have any relationships with EV charging companies already, then
yeah, and they're really data driven, like
Yeah.
EV companies,
they are going to pick the spots. They're not gonna pick the spots because we said they have to be in all the spots.
right, they're gonna
Every
pick
spot, and I get,
EV adoption
Yeah, I get
and
that.
travel patterns, like they do market research like anybody else
we
would.
can figure out where.
So
What's your guess, Dan, on what's the feasibility of the Downs taking in 25,000 square foot or greater retail within the down? I'm assuming it's all gonna have to be in the downtown district. So
yeah, I think
what are we
they're-
really looking for in terms of the Downs? And I'm just speaking only on the Downs.
Yeah, I would say. it's
For-
like 2 to 4 sites.
Okay,
And
so-
I think there's gonna. A larger grocery store, that's gonna be over 25,000 square feet, like a junior retail could be around 25,000 square feet. We think there's 3 to 5 sites in town center that would be
So
likely to be that size.
Mhm.
for the Downs, would it be, are you looking for a way, like I could envision you all going out and having conversations with EV charging and getting a bank set aside. And then all your retailers are covered, right? And they pay you some extra little fee for, you've already provided that. Is there any way that, would that work if the ordinance allowed for that? To where they could have a centralized location for a certain amount of retail square footage?
That's what
And
we're,
then
So
the
then we
retailer-
could like
yeah.
establish like a co-op
Yeah.
EV charging kind of
And then,
thing.
so it's shared, and they can handle that sort of separately from the retail negotiation, I imagine.
that's what we're kind of.
Yeah, and then they put
Um,
that into place, and it gets built out over a certain amount of time, maybe a percentage with each
Mhm.
retail development,
Mhm.
but that flexibility in ordinance. Their specific site is probably one of the only ones in town that's gonna be like that, unless we
Right.
have, if Cabela's redeveloped, but they're already parked, so it doesn't matter.
Right, they're already
They're not gonna
established
tear it up.
parking lots. They're
They
gonna-
tore it up and they did some new things.
They're gonna make some oases maybe,
Right.
and then that area
Exactly.
dedicated to that oasis is gonna have to comply.
That's what,
But
Freeport's like that, like an
Yeah.
example is behind hunting and fishing before. out in town, so it's not town there is a parking lot that has Tesla chargers. And then a bunch of level 2 chargers.
Mm.
And whether you're going to hunting and fishing or you're going all the way down.
Correct, I,
Yeah, you're gonna park there,
Yep.
'cause that's the setup of the community, like it's, you park once and you walk around. The same concept, would be in town center for that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
our thinking would be to do that. I think the level 3 piece is, can we start with level 2s and then we go after funding, we go after a partner to do like bait Tesla in after we have some momentum, like they need to see data that they're gonna get some revenue to plop down $500,000 to put it.
because nobody's doing it for the good of it, they're doing it to make money. I mean.
Yeah, agreed.
Why we started.
But-
Yeah, I mean, that's
To make
really.
sure that we had it.
yeah, we can't even get an entity that said they were gonna do it to actually do it. But yet,
Can I ask a more fundamental question at this point in time? In the first part of your memo, Dan, you said challenges with the electrical grid project and site capacity, and you say with the new EV installed and ready charging requirements, our residential and retail commercial sites now double and sometimes, in some cases, triple their estimated electrical loads. How do you plan to, how, I'm not an electrical engineer. I have no idea of understanding what kind of load does a level 3 charger produce on the grid. If I read this memo word for word, I'd like to believe that it would double or in some cases triple your estimated
Yeah,
electrical
so
load. I mean, it just sounds to me like these are open gushing sources of electrical load. Is that the case? And if in fact, if that is the case, how would you entice other people to put in charging when in fact you're facing, as you say here, multi-million-dollar electrical grid improvements?
that's why we're proposing.
How does this all tie together?
Sure. So the examples we have is, we have a condominium project that is under construction. We have the estimated loads through CMP, like CMP dictates like working with the electrical engineer, what the loads are of the building, and what size transformers you need. We, based on the estimates from CMP and working with our electrician, by adding the transformers, not just for the building, but for the chargers and then the ready component, they double the loads.
They
For that
double the
site.
loads for the entire project.
For
Your
that site.
entire project.
No, for that site.
At the residential level, I think that makes some sense. And my experience is that we are using approximately the same amount of electricity for managing a house as we are for managing cars. That's what the.
But that's your house.
Right, and so these.
I
are
mean,
residential properties,
this is a very large project.
But I'm talking about the residential side.
Well, he's having to
Okay.
install the EVs piece by piece. So that, I think that's part of the conversation is, so what he's talking about right now is one apartment complex with 96 units. They have to install the EV charging, so they're paying the double, and then this project pays the double. Because it is a large project, he's trying to figure out if there's a way to consolidate it all in one centralized location.
I appreciate that, but even if you do centralize it, are you still doubling and tripling the load on the grid?
No. We're saying instead of each apartment residential site having to have all their own chargers, there's 1 or 2 or 3, whatever the plan is, to have centralized charging locations so that we don't have to do that at each site. At a grocery site, if we do a level 3 bank, you're likely tripling, because of the demands of a level 3 charger, you're likely tripling the loads of that site.
So how does this redound to tip the project into multi-million-dollar off-site grid improvements?
Because right now, the way we've designed the project, we didn't run this analysis during the ordinance process. It wasn't on our radar to know exactly what was to be decided in terms of the ordinance. We had designed the project to fit within the capacity of the grid. And then if you double from here on out, electrical demands, then we're faced with It's not the town's responsibility, it's our
See,
responsibility.
this is where maybe I'm not smart enough to follow this. I don't understand how level 3 chargers add that much load onto the grid. How much juice does a level 3 charger draw?
Well, it could draw the amount of the house in about half.
And when they
And
did
if it was,
they're
and they're required, I think that.
And how many level 3 chargers would we have there? I mean, did they? If you're gonna put in a supermarket and you're gonna have 5 level 3 chargers, is that gonna double the amount of electricity that's being drawn?
Yeah, have you done the math, Dan? And I think this might help. You said maybe 3 to 5, 25,000 or greater retail could likely go into the downs from here on out. What would that math look like in terms of the number of level 3s you would need? Because again, the ordinance and the parking ordinance allows for X number of parking spots. Then the EV ordinance has percentage of that. So what have you determined to be the potential exposure that you have for level 3 chargers?
We'd have to run the math, we've run it on what's in front of us, like if grocery comes in the next 6 months. It would be.
Yeah, but you're forward looking and you've already said that potentially 3 to 5, 25,000 or above could go into the downs.
What is it per install and what is it per ready? I don't have it in front of me, but we have to design for ready too.
Well, does Ready, now this is another question, does Ready draw load on the grid?
No, and if they didn't put the, transformer in, then they wouldn't be obligated.
It's not drawing, it's encumbering. You say, I have to put in a transformer for some future level 3. That's taken off the. that counts
So they
against you.
set that aside.
Yeah, like it's not even necessarily. There's also like usage versus what they plan for. Like you can put in a level 3 bank and no one ever uses it. But the maximum usage is,
I understand.
they basically like encumber,
Provide for it in their capacity planning.
right?
Go ahead, Deb.
So I have then a secondary question of concern, a thing that we just want to think through. Is if we change the ordinance so they don't have to put the transformer in. Then who pays for the transformer when the load? Like when we get closer to where that load is needed. Like now the project is done, the developer is gone.
The company that wants to actually make money off the EV chargers would pay for that.
I'm thinking residential.
Was the rest, I don't think.
Residential doesn't have any level
No,
3.
multi-family residential, I'm not talking about level 3s now, I'm sorry, I'm changing.
The transformer.
I'm talking about an apartment complex that under the current regulation might require 2 transformers. And we say, okay, we get it, we weren't really trying to get you to spend all the hardware money right now, so we don't put the transformer in.
The apartment complex pays for it. I mean, you've got a bunch of customers who want to live in the apartment, you're gonna put in the transformer.
Yeah, and they can
to-
do an add-on fee for whoever.
Yeah, it's not avoiding, I mean, we're trying to match up.
So you could do that under the existing
The amendment.
ordinance. Allow for that,
We
if
would
we,
just have to adjust the definition.
if we adjust the definition.
Right.
I wanna go back to the level 3 though, because
In 10 years, the grid's gonna.
you don't know, solar's available, storage is going to be much more available, there's a lot of things that flow in.
I'm sorry, I'm just, with level 3s, I'm just falling all over the fact.
Well, I wanna look at this level 3 because I think it's important.
If they don't draw that much power.
They draw.
They do.
But
There's
as a,
demand.
but as a percentage of all of the power that's being utilized, what are we talking about here?
Well, that's kind of where I'm going at with you, Dan, is our ordinance for retail, where a level 3 is required. You only have to do 50% of 25 total percent is what the maximum build out would be.
Which is ridiculously high, and I remember talking about this.
Well-
early on, that
So let's look at Costco, for an example. So they have what, 760 parking
Six
spaces?
hundred and 94,
I thought it was.
if they built it as per plans,
They probably
because they
built it,
forgot to put the chargers
So
in that
the-
were on the plans.
Well, yeah, they weren't required.
They said they would.
Said they would, never believe the developer,
Hundred
sorry.
and seventy-three
Um,
spaces,
so 173 spaces would have to be
level 3.
level
That's-
3.
So, and then there'd be 173 level twos, is that what you're saying? Because
Yeah,
it's
because
5% of the number of, for level 3 and 50% for level 2.
So 700 spaces.
At the first, right up front, Rick,
Yeah.
Rick, or
Yeah.
Not right up front, but I'm talking total, if everything was built out to be EV ready or EV capable, no, ready. I get those confused.
Yeah.
If it has a plug for it, the maximum build out that you would be exposed to is 25%.
So if you had a Costco, 700 spaces, 350 would have to be level 2.
No,
No.
no, because they're
25%.
required to build out a
It says-
maximum of 25% of their parking lot.
It says 50% level 2.
Yeah, but that's 50% of these numbers
Got
that
it.
have to
I'm
be
sorry,
level
I'm
2
like
and level
that.
3.
Reading.
Those numbers are high. We talked about that.
Well, what are the numbers? Cause I don't know if they're,
I don't understand
Okay,
again.
okay, so
32 spaces.
It would be 87.
None of us can even do the math.
Well, it's not, but listen, let's put a friendly thing out here. We're not gonna make any decisions here
Yeah, yeah,
today.
Right.
This is just some fact finding and establishing. Maybe, Dan, I would ask that, could you potentially give us what the Downs exposure is on the level 3 chargers? Quite honestly, I feel like this was vetted so much and the level 2s and the percentages were out there throughout the whole process. And we have developers following it today. We've done 2 multifamily complexes that are doing it. We've gotten 3 hotels within the last 18 months that are following the ordinances. And so I'd like,
This is the only requirement for level 3.
That's
right?
correct.
So this is an unknown and okay, this number for 700 spaces is 88 level 3 spaces.
And that's insane.
That's a freaking lot of level 3 space.
So what I was trying to.
but if it's for 5, let's say it's for 5. What was the number of?
700. So
That's for
Costco's parking
Costco,
lot
we
would
Oh,
have
okay.
88 level
At
3.
full build out, which that's not what they would be required to do.
They wouldn't be required, they're only required to do 5% to make it with a
So
plug.
Now we're talking about 20 level
Which is
chargers in the Costco parking lot, which remains excessive. I remember having this fight before, and I was really loud about this being too many. And we decided to just put it in and see what happened, and now I think we're
And
seeing.
now we're seeing, yeah.
And so there's 2 changes you're asking for. One is
The ability to share,
redefine, 3, the ability to share,
share
and then rethinking the level.
definition of
Okay.
ready to not
All right.
have transformers. And to have level 3s be basically an incentive for level 3s, not a requirement. Enable an opportunity for us to go chase a partner, but not have that be tied to a retailer moving forward. Because I guess one of the things that surprises me with this whole ordinance is gas stations, the only type of business that's actually in the business of fueling cars has no requirement.
Well, that's because we didn't want to overlap the businesses. Like, nobody's
Just saying,
like-
they're the ones
No,
who
but-
actually are
But that's
trying to
not a
sell
place,
fuel.
but that's not a place where you can go and do something else. So the model for charging an EV and the model for filling a gas are 2 different models. So when you're filling your gas, all you're gonna do there is buy gas and then you're gonna leave. When you're charging an EV and it takes more time, that needs to be done at a location where something else is happening. And so that's why we didn't want, like, that was an active decision not to put them in the gas station. Because that does not feel like the place that you want to be.
Well, just thank you.
Okay, I get that, but it's a
Okay.
business that understands.
They don't understand.
They don't understand EV, they're in the business of
It's a
gasoline.
grocery store or
Right.
a
They don't really know
or
what a
a
grocery store
or a
is.
furniture
Right.
store.
Right, so those are, I mean, they're different cases, right, I get that.
But in all cases, you don't have the grocery store doing the design work. You have professional engineers and those kind of
It's
things.
not a
working.
design, it's a cost and revenue question.
Agreed.
Level threes, if there's some way to figure out, like, we have a fee in place, but what if that fee is sort of, okay. The grocery store goes in and the number is probably too high, but like, let's look at that, but then there is a level three fee, and that's actually not a fee to the town, it's almost a performance guarantee that when. There is maybe a share,
Like,
you come back and you get reimbursed, when you
Like
come
seed
back,
money.
it's seed money, and then you set it aside, and so the town has it. And I don't know, if we could figure that out to where it gets put back to the developer who goes and gets Tesla or whoever to put in the car and make, or if the
I'm
town.
sorry, at a philosophic level, why is this all seen as some great burden rather than just a enormous competitive advantage?
Well, because we're not there yet, because we're not there yet.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna put in a supermarket and you're going to have people who drive EVs come to your supermarket, why doesn't the supermarket owner or the developer see a EV charger as a competitive advantage and say, come to our store, charge your car free, for instance, while you shop?
We're starting to
Why-
see some of
Why
that in
is,
other
why do we
places.
approach this as some kind of onerous burden rather than something that enhances the overall value of your project?
If it wasn't cost prohibitive, it would be. If it level 2 chargers, you can afford to install.
Well,
for a
then
grocery
that
store.
raises another question about what represents cost prohibitive, and that is in relationship to the entire income stream of your entire project. And I don't have those numbers. Are your transformers, are your equipment? Who pays for that? Do you pay for that as a developer? Do you capitalize it?
We pay for that.
Yeah, do you capitalize it? Do you carry this on your balance sheet?
We do on rental apartments.
And is it depreciated over a period of time? Yes.
Yes.
So what are we talking about here in terms of expense?
A level 3 charger is $60,000 to $100,000
And if-
per charger.
Yes, $60,000, you put it up on your balance sheet. What's the useful life of a charger? 20 years, 15 years? Take 20, divide it into 60,000, you get $3,000 a year. You
You
get
do that
so-
without the cost of a project. I mean, this isn't.
That's the way business works, though.
Yeah, and businesses. don't
But
move
these are not
forward.
one-time outlays. These are carried over a decade and a half. That's why I'm trying to understand, what is material here?
It's material to require level 3 chargers of a grocery store that adds an exponential cost to something that
Well,
they don't generate revenue
Well,
for.
and to be,
exponential means squared, right? As in doubled.
I'm just
I'm
giving you the information
I-
about how this works and doesn't work with the project.
okay. And what I'm saying is, I understand where you're coming from. But
Okay.
I think that some objective data would really help push forward this conversation. That's just me talking. But that's kind of where I'm coming from, because I'm not an electrical engineer, but I do understand some of the economics.
I am wanting to ensure that places like grocery stores wind up with level 3 chargers. I am understanding that the model is a little bit strange, given that that's gonna come in from the outside. And so I'm wondering if what we need to do on the level 3 requirement, first of all, back it off, since 88 is ridiculous. What we need to do on the level 3 requirement is require the builder to put in the pad and the wiring. We'll have to talk about transformers, because I'm only really thinking about transformers. And also put money into an account that will be used to facilitate the installation of level 3 chargers as needed around the town. And so at some point, it might be that pad at this place that we just talked about, but it might first be a pad at the beach. Or it might first be somewhere else, but that we would have the basic infrastructure in place to be able to put those in. And I mean, from my experience, if a grocery store would have,
And maybe even it's set aside as an easement to the town, and maybe that's how we do it. Because if they were to pay in and the pad was there and the wiring was there and it was an easement to town I don't know, yeah, it's. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah.
I would think
So-
about it and then it didn't work out.
so, I mean, I'm not getting the structure
Yeah,
exactly
yeah, I'm
right,
just trying to figure
but I
out.
wanna make it quick and easy and attractive for EVgo or Tesla to say, oh, there's a spot that's
There's
ready.
7 spots.
We'll
in
drop
this
that
town.
one right in.
Mhm.
Well, because to be fair, the grocery store, we have 2 Hannafords and neither one of them have EV charging.
and so a lot
And
of.
so you're putting a bigger burden on a new.
And that's
retailer.
intentional, because that's all that we really have access to, right? We can't go back and say all the existing grocery stores.
Right, this is all,
We develop parking, but what I'm saying is the free market is not out there going, ooh, that's a really great spot to put in a row of 10 chargers. Because it's a business model that they're out there using. So Dan's trying to talk that business model. That developer into going into a new site. Instead of. There's already some capacity in these existing sites. I guess that's what I'm seeing. I saw that a lot. in
I've seen
Texas,
Hannaford
is
doing
we
some
had, like,
things.
Walgreens, and we would have little strip centers that had some extra spaces. They would do leases and they were popping up everywhere, private entities.
Yeah.
doing
Yeah, I mean,
chargers.
Walmart put in Walmart and Scarborough put in chargers, Hannaford's and other municipalities
So
have
I'm
put
just-
in chargers.
I'm just saying it's a little bit of,
And the intent of this ordinance was really to get developers thinking
sure.
about where they would go and planning for that, so that when they're ready to
When
be
they're ready.
installed, we're not ripping up parking lots.
Yep.
Because it's so much easier to plan for it at the outset rather than, and less
Yeah,
expensive.
installing conduit and doing all
Right.
the underground work, so it's ready, makes complete sense.
Okay, let me go back and look at the numbers and we'll come back and talk about this.
I think this has been helpful in getting facts and hearing from a developer. Because this is the first time it's been brought back to the committee.
I'm sorry, I don't feel like I have all the facts.
Well, what facts do you need? I guess would be,
Well,
You need something
I first would like to understand how level 3 chargers redound to capacity constraints and load on the grid. If I read this, putting in level 3 charges is gonna double and triple the load on the grid, and it's going to require multi-million dollar enhancements to the grid. That seems to be a deal killer right there.
well, I also heard maybe there's 2 other things that we can investigate is one, what would a redefined definition be for being ready, capable, that sort of thing, and kind of gnaw on that a little bit. And the other one is taking a crack at what would a shared parking scenario look like. And I think those we need to,
That we were very open to from the perspective, I remember a conversation about like a strip mall, we're talking about existing places in town.
Sure.
And so then we had a conversation about like the Ace Hardware parking lot over there. We were wanting to think of that like as a single entity that would need to have a couple of.
Yeah.
Couple of level 2s for employee, like the building over time, but level 2s for employees. And that seemed too small even for a level 3. And so when we were thinking, so the shared model, I think makes sense if it's essentially a shared parking lot. But I think the shared melt level may not make sense if it's not a shared parking lot.
I think those are things that we can,
Like a walking distance.
Autumn and Jamie, is that something that you guys could do a little investigation in and bring back to the committee, and maybe we can gnaw on the language a little bit and see if we can't come up with something that still has, teeth in this ordinance. This needs to, it's all part of our comp plan and it's part of the state plan. And, I think there may be some joggling of definition, and the whole idea of shared parking would be something that I think we should maybe investigate.
Can you,
No guarantees, no promises, but I think you brought it up. We want to respect that. But again, it's at this point, we're just investigating and kind of see if we can come up with a solution that will help all developers.
can you also do me one favor? Would you talk to your accounting person and ask them how you account for these? And what, and how, these obviously don't get expensed in year one. They get hung up on your balance sheet and they're depreciated over the life of the investment. I would just like to know what the accounting treatment is for this. Ultimately, when you put in an EV charger, right, you attempt to recover the expense of that EV charger against a lease. Will you own the property outright that you lease to a grocery store, or do they just buy it from you?
It depends.
So the question is, who's paying for the EV charger? Is it the Downs? Is it the Risbera organization? Or is it the ultimate purchaser of the property?
It totally depends on the transaction.
Okay. Anyway, would you ask your accounting person how this works?
I don't think that's a fair question, because I think this ordinance applies to the whole town, and I don't
No.
think we get in, I mean, they could give you that answer, but I don't
I'm
think
not,
that.
I'm not asking for sensitive economic information here. I'm just saying, I feel like I've been presented with a document that says this requirement is onerous to us from a financial perspective. And I would just like to understand what that is.
So I think that NFIP's pushback is that the costs are not block costs, but they're costs that are depreciated over
Right.
time. And that if we're presented with them as block costs, it feels one way, but if we're presented with them as depreciated over time, it might feel a different way. It's less of a.
And what I'm saying, how they look at their cost is really up to them as a private entity, but if we agree that the point of the conversation is valid, we should discuss that on its own merit.
On its merits.
That's all I'm
But
saying.
we can keep in mind.
Yeah.
The,
But you have,
I need to understand what kind of economic burden this is.
I'm more interested in having something from CMP that says, this is the level 3 is the usage versus level 2 and what that does to our grid and our capacity. I'm more interested in having something from them.
Mhm.
If that's, you know, I mean, not that yours is, it's just, it's really weedy to get into
You
their
go to the
financial.
hospital, the doctor asks you, what's your pain level? Is it 1 to 10? Well, I'm hearing 8 or 9.
Mhm.
I'd like to understand, is it in fact 8 or 9? I don't think that's an unreasonable request.
I think that whatever they give you back is gonna say their pain level is 8 or 9, and they're just gonna rewrite it and.
I'd like to understand it from
I think
their,
we
from
should
their.
talk about the
No, I
merits of,
just show me.
is
I
it a
just-
valid issue based
so we may
on
say,
the burden of what you have to do?
and we may say because of the way American tax law works, we believe that this is in fact a pain level 4. rather than-
They have to be a little bit less than another developer because
To
the
be,
Downs was given a CEA and those kind of things too. So they have some advantages that another developer does not have.
to be responsive to Rick's original observation, your other developers have shown up with hotels and whatnot and say my pain level is 0 or 1. This developer shows up and says their pain level is 8 or 9, and I'm just saying,
Sure.
why?
And to be fair, I will say that the hotels that have shown up have known when they come and they have their initial conversation with us, they do a pre-application and we say, BTW, EV chargers are required, and they go back. The Downs did I'm not trying to advocate, I'm just trying to. be
All I'm
fair.
saying is
They
that these are-
created their performa when they started this project without this requirement.
Mhm.
And then we changed it, and they're just, I just wanted, that's a valid.
I appreciate, I also appreciate these people are much smarter than me. This is their business.
Sure.
They weren't born yesterday. They saw this coming down. You know?
Yeah.
They forecasted.
Do we have steps forward that we
I
you can
think so,
go.
we can
and-
definitely look at some different options, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
AV does seem ridiculous.
I think there's some, I'm quite convinced that level threes we could do some clever, innovative ways in which we can still get customers we won't, again, this is town of Scarborough, we're looking at the Downs as a huge asset to this town. And I think we owe it to the town folks to make good decisions and beneficial decisions for them and for the state. These kind of places are not gonna be just visited by town folks. And so let's approach it that way. I'm not sure any other entity within this parking or this EV ordinance warrants any further consideration, but I think we can look at the level threes.
Well, and I think that we can look at the redefinition of ready.
Of ready, sure, yeah.
And I think that we can,
And that could apply to level twos if we wanna go down there, but let's think about that.
and
Yeah.
we can look at the shared.
All right?
Can I add one? I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
just want to quote, you had mentioned that it was part of the town's plan, the state's plan, it's part of our plan too, like, we're not, we're speaking
No.
against this in any way.
We're-
Also, when we, looking to fill apartments or sell homes, like, this is an amenity, it does give a competitive edge, and we're not looking to go against it at all. But we want to be able to be a little nimble in the execution of it, because technology is advancing incredibly. And from when we first started and we have a lock and key on our AV to now, people can go up and work it with their phone. I mean,
Oh,
who knows what's next? So, we want to be able to
sure.
respond to the demand and leverage the technology that's out there, partner with a company that will give us the insights to make us make responsible advancements, and also allow us to kind of respond to the demand of people that are looking next. So
No,
Codes change too, and within the energy code, there's provisions and typical homes that you live in, we live in today, do not have the same load that are in new homes. In fact, sometimes their electricity is going way up, their costs, but they don't have any fuel costs. So we have to balance out that code is going to, in some point, maybe we'd have to adjust this because it would be below code. So that's a work that's continuing, and I know we're moving to the 2021 here. It's in rulemaking right now, open for public comment, and then they're gonna close public comment. And the Newbeck board has already signed off on it, and that includes the stretch code. So stay tuned for that, just a heads up.
Well, thank you very much.
Sure, thanks for bringing this forward, and we'll do you gave us something to do. Not that we were bored, but we don't mind working further down.
Great.
Thank you.
fine.
Yeah, and you're welcome to stay and hear the rest of the meeting. Not quite as juicy as that. Jamie, you wanna go, maybe talk about real quick your take on what happened at the coastal meetup?
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you, Rick, for coming. It was nice to see a friendly face, and I had someone from, is that on the Conservation Commission or just on the app?
The open space. ad
Okay,
hoc
right.
committee.
Well, it was nice to see, people I see in these meetings at the coastal meetup trying to support. There, I think, were 11 people who showed up, which was, I think, a pretty good turnout. And a lot of people who were pretty excited and interested in both flooding in Scarborough and stuff. There were some kind of technological hiccups that I'm gonna take up with GMRI, so I think that
With
was
the website?
Yeah, with the website and people not being able to use it, so there was really no one who was, on their phone actually properly filling out the form, documenting. It was more like people wanted to go home and then do it, which I think was fine, but they got to look at the questions and,
Yep.
like Doug said, he was like, do we actually need to do it here, or are we just like learning how to do it, like, so in a sense, it's fairly straightforward when you actually get onto the site and look at what to do, but it was cool to get people out there.
What I found fascinating is the level of the tide on the
Yeah.
astronomical, it was timed to be at the astronomical high tide. And then when I was driving home, there was no launching of the canoes. They were in water already.
At
That
the
just
Audubon
floored-
Center, yeah.
That just floored me. And that was well underwater. It wasn't just a little bit.
Yeah, so the tide last Thursday, at the time that we were out there was about 10.8 feet roughly. And a tide like that, the Audubon Center, has water in their parking lot up against their building. So it's not even during storm events or anything
Right.
like that. It's during, some of the highest tides of the month they're experiencing flooding on a regular basis. So they are in the process of, looking for new space for their Scarborough Marsh Center because.
And I'm glad
it's
we
only-
updated the ordinance for the height
Oh,
in the floodplain
Yeah.
zones.
It's only gonna get worse for
Yeah.
them, unfortunately, in that location.
Anything else? Year of the observation?
We've got
Um,
lots of feedback to give to GMRI.
Yeah, mostly on the technological side, which I understand and I think would be helpful, because I
Good.
also found their site a bit, not user friendly. As much as this project is marketed towards being, user based. But other than that, we got really good feedback, kind of content wise. A lot of people were excited that this existed or didn't know that there was anything of the sort going on. So I think it was cool to get word out there. There was a teacher there who wanted to get her students involved in it. So yeah, I thought that sort of event was a neat way to just talk about climate resilience and and get people's feedback on how they feel about it. So for people who aren't as familiar with the project or haven't looked at the questions, but not only asked for photo documentation, but also how residents, how that makes them feel, how that makes them feel about what their town is doing, what do they think is the best way to go forward. So it's not only just that's kind of what I was trying to get across, is it's not just pictures and just uploading them and sending them from events, but also weighing in, on the human aspect of how coastal flooding is affecting people. And obviously it is. So, yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for doing that. And it's great that we have somebody that can get back to GMO and maybe recommend some.
Yes,
Yeah.
improvements, modifications. It'd be great if they just had an app that you download on your phone, instead of trying to do it through their website, because their website isn't the best on mobile.
And having all the different tabs, it should all be integrated into one.
Right. Yeah.
It's
It makes sense on a website. It doesn't make sense on a phone. And if you're
No.
asking people to use your phone in the field, it's
Exactly.
really cumbersome. So.
So I'm talking to them probably this week about that.
Great, and then Sustainable Scarborough Day, it's just over a month away now, which is crazy to me. We have 29 vendors signed up.
Excellent,
We are,
yay.
we are going to be the region's kind of big event for Drive Electric Week. Usually it's hosted by either Portland or South Portland. and
Yay,
they've
that's
decided
awesome.
that they need a break from that and their communities have been saturated, so we're moving it a little bit south to Scarborough. So working with GPCOG and other partners to make that our kind of keystone.
How many
electric.
vendors did you have last year?
About 24, 25.
Okay, so it's a little bit bigger. I'm
Yeah.
just curious.
Yep, a little bit bigger. People are still kind of coming in. The banner has been ordered. I did not realize how expensive
Uh-oh.
banners are.
Those
It-
are very expensive.
They're very expensive. It basically ate up our entire budget for this year. So don't ask me for anything more because you're getting a
You're gonna
banner.
get free advertising from the leader or?
Did you make your banner so you can use it in multiple
Yes.
years?
Yeah.
They usually are heavy duty
Yeah.
canvas or plastic.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm justifying it, that we will use it for multiple years. We'll just, but yeah, that
So you
baby
can
was
spread your
expensive.
cost over
Yes, I'm
multiple
gonna
years.
depreciate it.
Thank you. You see how this works? You see how this works?
So how much was it?
The joys of,
$2,700.
the joys of accounting, which is an onerous, horrible expense, isn't it?
Well, that's great.
And Patrice has
Okay.
some exciting news too.
Yeah, so I have some exciting news. So, first exciting.
You're getting married.
Yeah. You met my husband. I
All right,
think
we're on
I-
it.
Okay,
Sustainable
so,
Scarborough Day and-
no, so, the most exciting thing for me is, I went to Abrams and, to talk to them about getting stuff. And something did come of that, but the person that, contacted me, said, Adrian said a few teenagers came in. And
Teresa's now a teenager.
I went in with an elderly friend, really, and we're two teenagers, and I find that very.
That is very.
Yes, it is, they're two teenagers, anyway.
They need
so-
to get better eyesight there.
So, we are now on with, Raquel Boucher, who, is part of the Building Decarbonization Coalition. It's a nonprofit. And she was out in California. She, has since moved to Maine, but she cooks and does all this stuff nationwide, and she's always in an airplane going somewhere. So, she will, she is how do she describe herself? She's going to do cooking. She's a chef and a national advocate for induction and decarbonization. She has all the equipment for the induction stoves, and she does this all the time.
Nice.
So she will be doing cooking demonstrations, and she wanted to know from me, so what can I do? Just cook, or can I cook and give out samples, and what can I do? So it's all gonna be cool. I told her that we might have, because you had said we might have a little money. but
Yeah, we might be able to find a little bit more.
A little
but
bit, you
not
know.
over
Buy
it.
groceries or something?
Yeah, something like that. So, depending on what she needs, but, she,
I can toss $100 at grocery.
I was gonna say, if she could provide us a list of groceries,
Right.
I'm sure that would not be a barrier for.
right,
this
well,
committee.
she does it, but any help would be appreciated. And her husband works at Agrins, and that's how, we found out about that. He found out about that, but, she said, I'm still looking at what Agrins gonna do for us. So, so that's, and she's a very knowledgeable and tough cookie.
It's a wonderful promotion opportunity for Adrian.
It really is.
Well, but Adrian said, they're very excited about it in the sense that not a lot of people in Maine are doing induction cooking and.
Why?
They just don't know about
There's
it.
gonna be
know
more
about
and
it.
more of those as
Exactly.
multifamily
It's
buildings.
just,
No,
it's just the more, once you've done it, you never wanna
Want to
do-
go back.
Yeah, I never want to touch my electric stove.
So,
This group
but
is
they, Agron said they were excited about it. I'm really glad we don't have to, they were gonna, see if they could, give us a small, countertop, cooktop. At cost or something like that. Now we don't have to do any of that because she has all the equipment. So she has equipment for the cooking part and all the pots and pans and mixing bowls and all that stuff. She is gonna need, I happen to have 2 tents. I'm an artist and I do these shows all the time. So the white tent thing, I have that. We're gonna need some tables.
So this is gonna be the sustainability committee's booth, right? So we
Is
have,
it gonna be?
I think so, that's what we talked about at the last meeting.
Okay.
So, we have, a town canopy, that we can use.
Oh, you have that?
Yep,
I
and
I have
then,
an additional one too.
and I guess we'll need to know like what she needs for tables because we
She
can.
got 2 like 6 to 8 foot long tables. The other thing she said is it's very popular when she's doing all this cooking stuff and she talks continually and gives out samples. It's very popular. And she would like to, if possible, have some kind of a microphone.
Mhm. Yeah, we
Okay.
should be able to handle that.
Okay, and she said a few chairs, like setting up like a little bit of audience thing would be very appreciated because, it's a 30-minute thing and some of the
People wanna
people,
sit down.
yeah, they do want to.
So maybe, yeah, you can have it on the schedule that, at this time, there's gonna be a cooking demonstration.
She
and
said she's
people
gonna
are-
do it from 10 to 2.
Oh, constantly.
Constant.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
And she said, I'm
Got it.
used to doing this. And she said, sometimes I'm just talking,
Okay,
sometimes I'm cooking, but she is big into advocating for induction and
We're gonna
decarbonization.
have the ability of plugging the stoves in.
So that's
we've got
another.
generators.
We were
or
talking
something.
about
Extension cords or
putting
something.
that next to
The Rivian?
somebody's power bank, like.
Yeah, so we can check with like Revision to see if they have a portable, like a battery. I know they used to have a solar panel on a trailer. I don't know if they have batteries anymore. And then April was going to check with her neighbor who has an F-150 Lightning that we might be able to plug into also.
Well, that would
Yeah,
be,
so I connected,
was-
I connected Jamie with the owner of Green Care.
lawn care business on Broad Turn.
Yep,
Yeah.
his name's Paul Beaver. He is at the forefront of electrifying his vehicle fleet. And he expressed a lot of interest in participating. And he said he would bring the Cybertruck. So, I'll leave it to Jamie and Paul to coordinate what that looks like. But he was very excited to participate. So that's great.
And then would keep these little cookers powered up for 4 hours.
I will ask that question.
This-
All right, anything
no,
else?
And so that. no, I-
Okay, we're pressed up against
Okay, I
time.
know. So the other thing is, the Chamber of Commerce, right?
Rotary Club.
Rotary, not Chamber. Yeah, they, really want to do the e-waste.
Hmm.
Catherine Williams, and she asked, so she just sent me, they had their meeting last night, and this morning, the club would like to participate. I'm still working on the recycling company. They can't find anyone to do it for free, so they're gonna have to charge a small amount per
Item.
item.
Yep.
And I said, I think for the convenience of just taking your items and going to this place, I think people would pay whatever,
Yep.
$5, $10, $20 a
You
thing.
just need to get the word out
Right.
ahead of time.
Yeah, so I'm still working on the recycling company. If you see Jamie Fitch, could you ask her if she has contacts to Casella or Riverside Recycling or any other company?
Yep.
Anyway, they have the tents, they have the staff, and they want to do it. So that part's cool. And as far as, Ace Hardware, I went up there and talked to the manager, and he said this is all done with the community person, organizing, advertising and stuff like that. And I have been chasing her and not able to find her, but the manager was very excited and said we have a lot of electric products that, we could have a booth to show all the.
Oh, so they want to have a booth?
Yeah,
That's perfect.
right. So I got that, and then the little guy with the,
Yes, the reusable paper towel.
yeah, he's
He's
coming,
He's
and,
coming.
and the garden club, we're gonna do a bigger thing than usual.
Sounds fun.
Hmm,
Mark it on your calendar.
Yeah.
that's
I
real
wasn't
nice.
there last year. It was pretty fun.
So what's-
Anything else on sustainable? Anything you need from the committee?
The date is October 6th.
Yeah.
And so, at this point, we're probably gonna need like, volunteer assistance on the day of for like orienting people and set up and breakdown and things like that. I need to get my act together and get information out and, for stuff like that, but it's all coming together. I know, I'm sorry.
Is
Um,
the Tinker schools?
So the Tinker Bus is, I should hear hopefully next week if they're coming or not. It is like the same day as their open house. And so they were actually looking into potentially changing the date of their open house so that they could come to Sustainable Scarborough Day. So yeah, my fingers are crossed for the Tinker Bus because.
And there are other activities for kids?
Yeah, there will be other activities for kids. and things like that. Schools are still a tough nut to crack, so hoping to get information out through like community services with some of their sports bulletins, which will hit a lot of the school-aged children in Scarborough. Yeah, the schools are a challenge getting.
Weird. I'm not.
It's their policy to only put out school related stuff, so even though this event is happening at Wentworth,
But
that's
that's not necessarily true, because I get in the school newsletters information about things that are not directly done by the schools.
Well, and I don't know if like the schools have some leeway on their own, but like anything coming out of the central office, I think is only school related.
Raquel, my, induction cooking lady, asked, does Scarborough have any kind of program where they teach cooking and do they?
They got home ec.
Or do they have a vocational school?
well, there is like an adult ed where, could potentially do, like, through
Because she
Scarborough
said
Adult
she
Education.
works a lot with students and schools to teach
So
them.
I don't know if
the
Westbrook
vocational,
has
the Westbrook has a culinary. arts
And I don't know, Lake Region,
And our kids go there,
okay,
the Scarborough kids.
Oh, they do?
yeah, they go
Yeah,
to
they go to
Westbrook,
Westbrook.
yeah.
Vocational programming, it's a regional.
So I should reach out to them and see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
All right,
Thank you,
Anything else, Jamie?
Patrice,
Hmm.
thank you for doing all.
yes.
Yes, you.
Oh, and-
counted that.
Really nice.
Yeah, and it also, the restaurant idea, you know, it's already very complicated, so I think we gotta keep it simple
Yeah.
and not go to the individual restaurants, if that's okay.
I think that's great.
Yes, especially with the month out. I think
Mhm.
it's fantastic.
No, I think
You've
that's
done a lot.
That's
Thank you.
fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, moving on to
I'm a
updates.
teenager, man.
April, do you wanna, any updates from the town council?
The biggest thing I would say is if you're interested in the Gorham connector, and have been following that story and timeline at all, the council will be hosting, a workshop, at our second meeting in September to continue to discuss the impacts of the Gorham connector. And just as a counselor, like I'm trying to solicit as much, input as I can possibly get. And so, you know, that's going to be a really tricky one to figure out in terms of, you know, whether or not right now the council has a proclamation in support of the Gorham connector, but the feedback and the timeline has all changed, and so, you know, we're kind of in a tricky spot as a council, as far as that is concerned. And then the other thing I would do is put in a plug, nomination papers. We have 3 people who have pulled, for the 3 seats. No one has returned their nomination papers yet. And so if you're interested in running for the council or know anybody who is interested, it looks like we have a week left, until papers are due.
All right, I'm gonna defer to the planning director for planning board update. I typically just give them high level.
Let's see, we have a pretty light agenda coming up for our next meeting, but we are doing a site walk with the Downs on September 9th. And then we'll have a workshop with them to go over their plans for the downtown. We're still working on the FedEx project at Delaware Beach Ridge Speedway. And, that's about it. We're wrapping up our final commercial design standard
And-
consolidation, which has taken almost 2 years, so.
That's a lot of
exciting.
work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then our senior planner, Eric, for those of you that didn't know, his last day was August 9th, so. I'm running solo for a bit.
Any good candidates?
We went out, we decided not to move forward with them, and so I'm rethinking the position for a bit now. I'll probably sit at the dais with him now.
We didn't mind that.
I didn't think you would.
Conservation and
Yeah,
transportation.
Conservation Commission is still working on environmental standards, which would require larger setbacks and vegetated buffers around natural resources. We actually have a roundtable work group meeting this evening with members of Conservation Commission and members of the development community to kind of talk through the requirements and try to find some common ground to move that forward. That's their big focus at this point. There'll be other things coming forward soon.
And transportation met last night, and we're still going over our townwide transportation master plan draft. So we talked about the bike and ped component last night. We had a lot of comments. We also heard from a member of the public about the Gorham connector. And then we heard from GP-COG about a project that will be going on with one part of the grant. And so there's a study that will be done at Sawyer and Route 1 for pedestrian crossing safety, analyzing that intersection.
I went to, the town of Falmouth, they're getting an ordinance, I hope to have an ordinance about, pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers for the entire town, looking a little bit like, what is in place at, in South Portland, Cape Elizabeth, Falmouth, Portland. And it was, one of the things I was very interested in is that it's the sustainability committee that's pushing it, not Conscom or anything like that. I thought that was pretty interesting. And also in the town, in South Portland, they have this thing, 100
Resilient lawns.
resilient lawn.
Yards.
At Resilient Yards, they're working with Audubon and landscaper, just a whole bunch of people. And they wanted 100, and within the first week or two, 435 people applied for this thing. And so they chose 100 sites, but that also was the sustainability committee that did this. Not that we need things for James and everybody to be doing, but that was kind of it. And the other thing about it was, so they had a panel of experts, 4 people, and they were awesome. Including Chip Osborne, who wrote, did you partake of the thing too?
I didn't know, but I've been to some trainings with Chip.
Yeah, anyway, he was awesome, and then they had a guy from Maine Lawn, I guess.
Jesse O'Brien.
No, it wasn't Jesse O'Brien. Okay. Anyway, and they had Casco Bay.
Estuary Partnership.
Yeah, and then they had the guy that's in charge of the whole thing for South Portland, who got that ordinance all set there, and the problems and where we're getting it in place and how they're managing it. So they were on the board, on the panel discussing it, very, very interesting. And then after was comment and the pushback from the residents. You would have thought they were asking for their firstborn son and gonna cut off their head, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So, but it looks like it's gonna fly.
Well, maybe that could be a future agenda item, and maybe we could bring somebody in and dive
So-
into it just a little bit, but let's do that after Sustainable Scarborough.
Yeah,
page.
and I will say that pesticides is on the horizon for Conservation Commission. That's something they're likely to
Okay.
pick up
Didn't
soon.
we
So.
used to have a pesticides committee? Well, I forget what they were called.
Yeah,
PMAC or
did.
something.
Yeah, they've combined with the Conservation Commission at this point, and it really was just to oversee the town policy. So the town has a policy that applies to town property, but it doesn't apply to.
And the school has their policy.
But this was gonna be
Yeah.
townwide, everybody.
As I,
Okay, let's not get too deep into it because we are up against our time.
as I recall, that was a big screaming and yelling match.
It was, and it usually is. Doesn't mean it's not worthy.
It's a long time ago, though, wasn't it?
Anything on the planning projects?
Yeah, so I just want to put a plug in. I'm gonna send out a link after this meeting to the open space plan website. We're looking for feedback from people to help inform the open space plan, and our engagement numbers are low. So if people could take a couple minutes to look through the information and give us some feedback on what you think is important when we think about land conservation. Is it important for like sea level rise? Is it important for clean water and habitat, things like that? Just looking for people to provide input.
There's a really easy survey link, and it takes literally like 3 minutes.
Mhm.
And then if you could share that with all your people, not your people.
Right, so I will send that out after this meeting, and then also just quickly, the vulnerability assessment is still rolling along. We had a public meeting middle of August, and we have neighborhood meetings in Higgins Beach and Pine Point scheduled for September. And so looking to wrap that one up this time next year. For the vulnerability assessment, open space will hopefully be wrapped up by February 2025.
Wow, impressive.
As a side note, we're working on short-term rental registration and food trucks if anybody's interested.
All right, well,
Thank you.
next meeting is September 25th.
And Rick's gonna be out of the country, so Deb, you're gonna be on the hook for running that one.
There you go.
Yeah, that's right.
Something to look forward to.
Am I an officer?
Yeah, you were
You were
vice
right.
chair. You missed.
Stayed up and.
Dude, was that the part of the meeting that you missed?